Before I start talking about these two franchises, I want everyone to be mindful that there will be spoilers for both of them, as I am going to be addressing plot similarities, so spoilers are a given. Everybody knows about the story of Devil May Cry, where Dante hunts demons for a living and finds himself at odds with his twin brother who gave in to his inner demons. The story has loose connections with the Divine Comedy, but they don't focus in on that. Instead, they focus in on the ridiculous over-the-top choreography and themes related to the player's journey throughout the game. Not too long before the first Devil May Cry was a game that shared a very similar theme, that game being Grandia II. Now, Grandia II references the 7 deadly sins, which played a huge role in the Divine Comedy, and it also features a protagonist who fights monsters for a living, who is also at odds with his brother, who also gave into his inner demons. Now, this might all be purely coincidental, but I can't help but feel that these two games are spiritually connected with their narratives, and I feel that it's worth pointing out some of the parallels between both franchises. Now, the first Grandia and Grandia Extreme have nothing to do with any of this, nor do Devil May Cry 2 or 5. Devil May Cry 1 also doesn't have much to do with it besides Nello Angelo's appearance. The main parallels between the two narratives are mainly seen in Devil May Cry 3 and 4. As for Grandia, while a brief arc of the second game feels like a parallel to Devil May Cry 3's story, Devil May Cry 4's story somehow manages to have similarities to both Grandia 2 and Grandia 3, going as far as to even share the same English voice casts for Grandia 3's lead characters with their Devil May Cry counterparts. I'm talking about Nero and Kyrie. Both of them share the same English voices as Yuki and Alfina from Grandia 3, those voices being Johnny Yong Bosch and Stephanie Shie. It should also be noted that both Alfina and Kyrie have a brother who just happens to be a major boss fight in both games, whom both Nero and Yuki have to face off against. There's also the moment where both Kyrie and Alfina are both taken away, only to be followed with Johnny Yong Bosch screaming the name of said character. Look, I'm not saying that there's connections here, this is clearly just a funny coincidence that I just had to mention, and to be honest, it's the only thing that truly ties Grandia 3 into this, as not only do they share the same English voices, but they also share a similar dynamic. Where the bulk of the connections are, however, is Grandia 2. Right from the get-go, Devil May Cry 4 starts with an intro cutscene showing Kyrie singing in a chapel with Nero fighting his way to reach the chapel. Grandia 2 on the other hand starts with Ryudo finishing his job and travelling to a nearby town for work, but it's not long before he too enters a church with a songstress singing inside. And both of these moments are accompanied with vocal tracks to represent the characters singing. Now, once again, this is absolutely a pure coincidence. I mean, we've already confirmed the fact that Ryudo's story parallels Dante more so than Nero's, but despite this, Nero is shown to have very little interest in religion, using his headphones to block out all of the preaching. Now, Ryudo is particularly vocal throughout the game that he can't stand religion, and that he hates God, so in a way, there are similarities with Ryudo and Nero also. But then you have Dante, who jumps in and kills the priest, which is kind of similar to the moment where Millennia appears and tries to destroy the church in Grandia 2. But as we already know, Dante's rivalry with his brother mirrors that of Ryudo, as well as his sarcastic attitude throughout Devil May Cry 3. Though I could see the argument that in Devil May Cry 4, Dante plays a role closer to that of Millennia, given the fact that he's a flamboyant lunatic in this game. Ultimately though, the fact that he kills the priest immediately kind of shows that he is closer to that of Ryudo, as Ryudo hates religion so much that it is something he would do. In a way, Devil May Cry 4's story feels like Grandia 2 if Ryudo knew what was going to happen beforehand, and they somehow managed to shoehorn a bit of Grandia 3's story in there too. The big twist of Devil May Cry 4 is where it is revealed that the religious cult actually turns out to be evil, and wants to use Kyrie to summon the Saviour. Well, the same thing actually happened to Elena and Millennia in Grandia 2, but Elena managed to escape, leaving Millennia to be sacrificed so that Valmar would be summoned. Do bear in mind that both the Saviour and Valmar play the exact same role. They are both gigantic entities controlled by a maniacal priest who seemingly has no concern for what will happen to the world as a result of their actions. While Sanctus isn't considered to be a pope like Zera, they are both known to be the leaders of their respective religious groups. Now, it's not Nero who manages to overcome the devastating Saviour, it is actually Dante, and in Grandia 2 it is Ryudo who faces off against Valmar directly. both Dante and Ryudo now have new weapons in their arsenal also, those being Yamato and the Grana Saber, giving them a huge power boost to prepare them for the daunting task of killing a god. While Ryudo manages to kill Valmar's outer shell in a matter of seconds from a rain of holy laser beams, Dante plays around with the saviour for a bit before finally putting him down. It is then that the battle is taken inside the god, where the religious leader resides. In Grandia II, everyone goes inside Valmar to confront Zera, but in Devil May Cry 4, Nero finishes the fight himself by going inside the Saviour and confronting Sanctus. Both games have completely different endings, with Devil May Cry 4 ending with Nero fighting off a bunch of demons from Kyrie, while in Grandia II there's an entire philosophical discussion on life. Yeah, I guess that's bound to happen given the contrasting nature of both of these games, as one of them is a narrative-driven JRPG, while the other is a game focused purely on action, with a story that serves to give purpose to the action and nothing more. Now, while all of this is likely to be a coincidence, I think there's some value in comparing the two takes on the story. Grandia III's story is absolutely dreadful, and the fact that similarities to Grandia III are even in Devil May Cry 4 is hilarious, but Grandia II's story is absolutely fantastic. So much so that I did an entire analysis on its narrative before. It is my third favourite game of all time, and my second favourite JRPG of all time. Then you have Devil May Cry 3, which is my favourite 3D beat-em-up of all time, and it's ranked number 10 on my favourite games of all time. Devil May Cry 4 doesn't rank as high as either of those, but it was still a solid game that I thoroughly enjoyed playing. I think narratively speaking though, it goes without saying that Grandia 2 has the best version of the story, but story isn't everything. There's an art in telling a story, with as few words as possible, and I feel that Devil May Cry as a whole does a wonderful job at doing that, with the exception of Devil May Cry 2 and 5, but that's a discussion for another time. I honestly think both versions of the narrative have their place, and it's interesting to see how they tie so closely together, despite being radically different games.
Words are meaningless now. Dance with me, brother.
You got that right.